can always open up a debate on your constitution, presumably. If you write something in, you can always write it out. If you don't want to be offended, if you don't want to be upset, if your feelings don't want to be hurt, become a hermit. Catholics and Anglicans and Catholics and others actually realised that the enemy was not each other, it was the challenge from without. And don't hide your light under a bushel. Or as St. Paul said, we believe and therefore speak.
Today, I am very happy to welcome the Right Honourable Ann Widdecombe on the channel, a former Conservative Member of Parliament and Government Minister, former member of the Brexit Party in the European Parliament. You are now Reform UK's Immigration and Justice spokesperson, and you are a convert to Roman Catholicism from the Church of England. Ann Widdecombe, thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure to be here.
In 2010, for the New Statesman, you said, "I left the Church of England because there was a huge bundle of straw. The Catholic Church doesn't care if something is unpopular." Would you tell us what were some of the straws in the Church of England which led to your conversion?
Well, I think the clue lies in the next line when I said, look, the Catholic Church doesn't care if something's unpopular. And I think that was best summed up in the encyclical, which didn't come out until after I joined the Catholic Church, but very shortly afterwards, the encyclical came out from John Paul II called Veritatis Splendor, the shining of truth. And the essence of the argument in that was that something may be unpopular, but still right, or it may be hugely popular, but still wrong. And that truth is what determines things. Now, the Church of England lost that perspective years and years ago, while I was still in my youth. And we had even a very senior bishop, he was then the fourth most senior bishop in the Church of England, questioned articles of creed. Well, if the fourth most senior bishop questions the articles of creed, well, where are we? And so it went on, and it seemed to me that the church was always sacrificing faith to fashion, creed to compromise, and it still wasn't filling its pews. That policy wasn't working. And I wanted a church which knew what it believed and stood by it through thick and thin, which is what the early Christians did. And so that was the big bundle of straw.
And now that you are in the Roman Catholic Church, do you think Catholics are brave enough today in the face of what's unpopular?
No, I don't. Catholics tend to want to compromise. And they want to tend to say, oh, well, that's teaching of the church, but maybe, blah, blah, blah. Now, the interesting thing is that there's a much higher bar for the convert than there is for cradle Catholics, because cradle Catholics can develop doubts about half the canon, and they still stay Catholics and they're still welcome at the communion table. If you are crossing into Catholicism, you have to say individually and aloud at the point of reception, I believe that all the church teaches is truth revealed by God. Now, therefore, if you have any reservations at all, you can't say that, at least not without committing a major act of perjury. But if you've always been in the church, nobody requires you to say that. And I think many Catholics do shilly-shally. Now, some things I understand, doesn't mean I condone, but I do understand. I understand Catholics who say that the church's teaching on contraception is just impossible in practice. I understand that. But the fact is that if something is true, it's true. And I think that is the thing we've lost sight of. The early Christians did not have an easy time. I'm always pointing this out. Paul was beheaded. Peter was crucified upside down. Stephen was stoned to death. They didn't have an easy time. But they knew what the good news and the message was, and they were determined to take that, in St. Paul's case, everywhere, determined to take that out and spread it. And that is what we have to do.
Well, many of my friends in France in their 20s are planning to become nurses or doctors or to get involved in public life. And there is a growing worry about many ethical questions. In 1998, you were Shadow Health Secretary to Labour Frank Dobson, and you said to the Daily Telegraph at the time that so long as licensing abortion stays with the Health Secretary, I couldn't do this particular job. So what would you say to young Catholics about to get involved in such ethical dilemmas?
Well, I don't know how it works in France, but certainly in England there is a conscience clause, which theoretically at any rate means that if you don't want to take part in abortion, you don't have to. But I underline 3 times the word theoretically. When the Abortion Act in this country was first introduced, which was 1968, when it was passed in 67, came into effect in 68, that conscience clause meant something. You really could say, no, I won't have anything to do with abortion. But gradually over the years, if you won't have anything to do with abortion, they won't have you in gynecology or obstetrics, or and it actually counts against you. And a select committee of the House of Commons took evidence. I forget the exact date, but it was in the early noughties, as we call them, in the beginning of this century. Took evidence about the workings of the conscience clause and concluded that it was no longer working as intended. Now, I don't know what the situation is in France, but my view would be that if you have a conscientious objection to something which you have made known in advance, you don't just suddenly take people by surprise. But if you have a conscientious objection which you have declared in advance, then you should not be forced to do anything which is against your conscience.
Absolutely, yes. But even in the most conservative parties, for instance in Reform UK, Nigel Farage said in May that he was broadly pro-choice. So do you think it is still possible to have an open and realistic political debate about abortion?
Yes, I do. Because, for example, in this country, people are very worried about the fact we now have abortion up to birth. So we actually have not just viable children being destroyed, but children who a couple of hours later would have full civil rights. So there is a lot of worry about abortion and the level and the rules that govern it in this country. Now, Nigel Farage may be broadly pro-choice, but he knows that I am not. The view of Reform is the view of all the other major parties. This is a matter for conscience. And if Parliament debates it, it's always what is called a free vote, which means you don't have to obey any party line. You vote according to your own conscience. So that is Reform's position. And yes, I do think it's possible to have a debate. And I believe that such a debate will come. It won't come under a Labour government. I mean, it's this government which has, produced some of the horrors. But it won't come under a Labour government, but under any other government, I think it's perfectly possible that this debate will come again.
Yes, and as you may know, in France, abortion was put into the constitution last year. So what is your reaction to that? Because it closes the debate in France.
Well, you can always open up a debate on your constitution, presumably. If you write something in, you can always write it out. I don't think that closes the debate. And it's up to, and it's not only Christians who oppose abortion. A lot of people oppose abortion, not only Muslims, but also atheists, agnostics, just they know it's wrong. But it's down to those who oppose abortion to keep the debate going.
Sure. Well, that's a hopeful and very pleasant thing to hear. Now, you are a spokesperson for Reform UK about immigration as well. So let me get a bit controversial. In the 16th and 17th century, and even before that, Christians had to go at the other end of the world to find cultures to evangelize. And now they are coming to us. So couldn't we say that immigration is, in a way, a great opportunity to expand God's kingdom?
No, I only wish it were. I'd be very careful about this because I'm aware that I'm talking to France, and England and France have somewhat different views on what is happening at the moment. Now, I don't think that. I think that lawful immigration done through the visa system is fine. So if you're bringing in priests or missionaries that way, that's absolutely fine. But when it comes to unlawful migration, which is what is happening at the moment from the shores of France, these are not people fleeing for their lives. They've already arrived in France, and I presume you're a safe country. I presume you're under the rule of law. I don't exactly think France is a dangerous country. So why are they coming to us? And it's economic migration, and that I do believe we are absolutely right to oppose. The health service is under strain, infrastructure is under strain, our benefit system is under strain, our budget is under strain, and you simply cannot just say anybody who wants to come here can come.
Sure. Do you think it is the duty of the church to go towards these people and try and evangelize them as they come, because they are coming, the boats are coming?
Well, if we have a reform government, the boats won't be coming. But for the time being, at any rate, as you rightly say, they're coming. Now, I believe in evangelizing everybody, absolutely everybody.
Sure, so it could be an opportunity.
It doesn't matter who. Frankly, this country needs evangelizing. And we have now some very good pastors coming in from Africa to do just that. Because
now it's reversed. Before we had to go someplace, and now we can do it in our own countries. It's a very interesting shift.
That is true.
In 2019, you said nobody has the right to live their lives being protected from offence or from insult or from hurt feelings. It is an occupational hazard of living in society. So this is a quote from your brilliant speech at the Oxford Union. And you are quite a passionate advocate for free speech. And yet, blasphemy is everywhere, and it is offensive both to Christians and to God. So what should we do?
Well, I've always said that with freedom comes responsibility. So that if, for example, you take what happened to Charlie Hebdo, I mean, I would defend their right to publish what they publish, but I would say they shouldn't have done it, because with freedom comes responsibility. So I don't want the state coming down like a ton of bricks telling us what we can say and what we can't say, which is what is happening in Britain now to a massive extent, to an extent that my generation can hardly find believable, but it's happening. But when you've got that freedom, you have to exercise it responsibly. So that is how I marry those two concerns. Now, there is an awful lot of blasphemy about. I don't know about in France, but in Britain, it's very hard to get through an evening with the television and not hear, the second person of the Trinity's name taken in vain, used as a swear word and not as a prayer. And there is an awful lot of casual blasphemy, but there's also a lot of quite deliberately provocative stuff. And I would just say, if you have the freedom to say these things, you should be very, very careful about when you do, and also about why you're doing it. If you're doing it just for the sheer joy of offending people, well, God sees it.
Yeah, sure. And also there is a major rise especially in the United States, but also in the UK, about the alternative media trying to promote free speech, while the traditional media are rather against free speech in some way. It's a form of propaganda. So how do you see this shift?
Well, the interesting thing is that we, of course, have had two big major news channels develop in the last few years. One called GB News, one called Talk TV. They are both to the right, and that is because we believe, and I believe very, very intensely, that the mainstream media is very heavily dominated by the left, that there isn't actually proper balance. There just isn't. So we're not Fox News. GB News is not Fox News, but it is nevertheless a right-wing voice. But it also promotes free speech. So in every discussion, you'll have somebody who takes the opposite point of view. And I'm a big believer in free speech. As I said in the Oxford Union speech to which you've referred, if you don't want to be offended, if you don't want to be upset, if your feelings don't want to be hurt, become a hermit. It's the only way you'll manage that.
Now, you are a Catholic in an Anglican kingdom. Have you ever, in your political or media career, been persecuted on the basis of your Catholic faith, specifically, or attacked?
No. I've certainly received letters, complaining that I let my religion interfere with my politics or whatever it might be. I've certainly received letters such as that. And when I joined the Catholic Church, I got quite a number of abusive letters. I also got quite a number of very supportive, kind letters. But I can't ever say that I feel in public life that I've been singled out just because I was a Catholic. I don't think that is true. Now, interestingly, when I was growing up, I was at a Catholic, I was an evangelical Protestant, but I was at a Catholic boarding school in the 1960s. And in that time, and it's difficult to conjure it up now for people who didn't live through it, But at that time, there was enormous tension between the Roman Catholic and the Anglican churches. Each thought the other was quite wrong. The Catholic Church, I remember having a nun who seriously believed that non-Catholics were going to go to hell. And the Catholic Church believed that it had absolute truth and there was no variation from that at all. And the Anglican Church believed the Catholic Church was full of superstition and indeed, blasphemous beliefs such as the sacrificial nature of the Mass, big thing for Anglicans. And there was enormous tension. I was at a Catholic school. I was not allowed to go to my own church. I was compelled to go to Mass. Obviously, I didn't take communion, but I was compelled to go to Mass. And it was very, very intolerant on a scale that now we would just say, oh, come on, surely that can't happen. But it did. So if you're going to ask me if I've ever suffered for my faith, I'm going to say to you, never as a Catholic, but yes, as a young Protestant.
Okay. So it got better in a way. Maybe the situation got a bit smoother.
I mean, the ecumenical movement began, Christians began talking to each other, but there is nothing like opposition to promote unity. And gradually through the 60s and the 70s, as people moved away from the church and away from belief, Catholics and Anglicans and Catholics and others actually realized that the enemy was not each other, it was the challenge from without. And that, I think, promoted a lot of unity. If we were still the sort of Christian country which I knew whereby most people, not all certainly, but most people went to church, we were taught the Gospels in the schools, we were taught religion as fact, not as belief. If it was that sort of country, I think we would still be heavily divided amongst ourselves because we wouldn't have that impetus to unity. There's nothing like persecution to enhance unity.
And before we leave, do you have any advice for young Catholics who want to get involved in public life?
Yeah, my advice would be go for it. And never be afraid to say what your faith is. I always have time for people who don't share that faith, because actually that is a way of spreading the gospel. But go for it and don't hide your light under a bushel. Or as St. Paul said, we believe and therefore speak.
Thank you very much, Ann Widdecombe, for this very, very interesting interview.